have the house to myself, so I thought I'd do a slightly more chatty video than normal. I'm going to be working in this handmade tag album. It's just some chipboard covers with some Canson mixed media paper in. So I'm going to have a go. Just put that piece of paper down to protect the rest of my papers. I'm feeling blues and greens and yellows, so I've gone for a cracked pistachio and fossilised amber in distress oxide. I've got a bit of quite thin film which I'm going to use to apply my inks. So I'm just going to pop the ink onto the plastic film, spray with some water, and then take that directly to the page. And it's very, very random. There's no rhyme or reason behind where I'm bothering to put it. I like the little dots that you get. Gives it a bit of texture. Right, that's enough of that one. Give my bit of plastic a clean, ready for the next colour, and then I'm just going to dry this layer so that we don't contaminate the colours. Right, I'm going to move on to the fossilised amber, and I'm just going to apply it in the same way. Pop the ink onto my plastic, spritz with water. I was a little more heavy-handed this time with applying the ink pad, so it's a stronger coverage of colour. I might have to go back in with some cracked pistachio in a bit. A little bit more. I'll water it down a bit more this time as well, so I've done a couple of spritz this time, just so we get some different intensities. And there we go. Give that one a dry. Yeah, we've definitely lost that cracked pistachio, so I'm going to bring some more of that in, but I might stamp some actually to try and give a different, some more depth. So this is my little pot of random stamps. I don't know where they've come from. They've just sort of gathered, and I've just sort of put them in there because they make good stamps for this sort of thing. So I'm going to add some of this text stamp in. There we go. Let's see if we can find one with a slightly bolder pattern. There's a little strip. It's almost like a brush stroke. I often sit and watch other people's videos and think, what's going through their mind at that point? What's made them think to do that? And to be perfectly honest, I don't think you do think. I mean, I planned this out in the fact that I knew what colours that I wanted to use, and I have my focal image already planned, but that's kind of about as far as the thought process went. So I want to add now that I've got some more definite colour in the green, I'm going to do some stamping in the yellow as well. Let's see, it's stuck together. This one's got a bit of script and some numbers on it as well. And because at this point it's not being diluted, it's an extra depth of colour, so that you're still using the same two colours, but you're getting more layers. Right, now to cover it all back up again. So this stencil is from All and Create. It's called the Totally Dotty stencil number 87. And it's an A4 stencil, which is a bit overkill for this project, but my focal image on this one is a butterfly. This is printed from a Facebook group that I'm in. A lady had shared these. I'll try and figure out what she was called, try and remember what she was called. I'll look back on my computer and I'll link her below. But she had designed a collection of butterflies that she had shared within the group. And there were mixtures of colours and things. And I've just printed a variety of them off in the colours that I like, and then the more neutral ones. So that's what I want to use today, this particular one here. And I'm just trying to decide, let me cut it down a little bit. Whereabouts I want him to sit, because that will determine where I want my stencil popping up. Bearing in mind that every area that I can see through on my stencil is going to end up with white gesso on, so I don't really want anything too big to cover up too much. I think I might try that there. So I need a sponge. Open up my gesso. The only thing I'm thinking now is obviously the distress oxides are reactive to water and to any liquid actually, so what I want is a nice crisp white top, and I don't actually think I'm going to get it this way, because what's going to happen is the gesso is going to react with the distress oxide underneath, and I'm not going to get that nice pure crisp gesso white that in my head I'm after. But no, when I pull it off I might decide that actually I quite like it a little bit mottled. You can see them picking up the ink. On the sponge. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. It's not as white as I'd like it, to be honest. I'm going to wash the stencil off and dry that up and have a rethink. Come up with a plan. I've washed my stencil, I haven't dried this yet, because I thought that what I could do is use embossing ink, cover it in white embossing powder and emboss it, but actually this is still quite tacky, so I'm thinking instead that I can just put the embossing powder directly onto the gesso, and then maybe I'll get a little bit of both in that, so hopefully my gesso isn't going to stick to the background. We shall see. Because I like the gesso, I like the fact that you get those bumps and ridges and the texture it gives, whereas embossing powder tends to dry flat. Okay, so it has gone on some of the areas that I've got ink where it's still a little bit wet, so I'll just take that back with a paintbrush. It's just where I stamped that last layer of yellow that it's okay. set that and see where we are. It's sort of melted in all the bumps. It's like this one here. It's all these little ridges where it's the gesso's bubbled up underneath as well. So I like that. That's come out quite nicely. Right, let's fussy cut the butterfly. There we go. Right, so he just kind of blends into the background, doesn't he? Okay, some Distress Oxide ink. So I'm going to go with Ground Espresso. I'm just going to darken up his edges a little bit. That's a little better. Right, I need a circle stencil. This is actually one I made myself on my Cricut. I just got a bunch of circles in different sizes. Yeah, I want that one. So I'm going to do this as tea dye. It's probably about the lightest brown I've got. And I'm just going to... Actually, I could probably do it without the stencil, to be perfectly honest. As the sponges are circular, I'll get more of a natural fade on the edges. Put a little bit of that Ground Espresso in the middle. That's the thing, it's just ever evolving. What you've got in your head doesn't always work in practice. I don't particularly want him hanging over the edge because I feel like he's just going to get battered. His wings will just get battered in this. So let's have him facing that way. I think I need a little bit of this Ground Espresso around the edges of the page. Okay. It's lacking something. Probably a bit of colour, seeing as I seem to have covered most of that up. Might do some splashes. So I'll bring back in those two colours of oxide. So we've got the fossilised amber and the pistachio. I'm going to give them a blitz with some ink, with some water. Might need a bigger brush. Of course, the downside is it is not going to land on those areas that I've now put the embossing powder on. Right, let's give that a dry off. going to take some of that and pop it on his wings. And then in the centre, try and get some of the yellow. It's really quite quite like that. Okay, let's think of a quote. These are all from an old paperback, can't speak today, paper pad. Put that one down the bottom. Everything that you imagine is real. So it had a couple of sheets that had sentiments and words. Obviously the colours are. There we go, let's just give that a bit of a going over with the blend espresso. Funny enough, I didn't choose the colours today based on the pad. It was while I was hunting down the butterfly that I found it, and it just happened that the colours worked well together. I feel like I want to break that up a little bit. I feel like that's the only way. Let's go for it. Just go for it. Stop overthinking it. It's not a piece of work that's going to be hung in some art gallery. We'll snip there as well. I think that's the trouble. I tend to overthink things way too much, to the point that I actually stop myself from going through with anything. I'm just going to dry the butterfly off a little bit because he's still a bit wet. Alright, I suppose I just stick it all down now. Let's find some glue. Using a wet glue because it just sticks better over the embossing powder. She says it's not sticking over the embossing powder. I'm trying to leave some of it unstuck so it gives it a feeling of movement, but I don't want it looking like actually it's not being stuck properly. He needs antennae, he looks silly. Okay, let's try and find Copic marker, see if I can. This is the bit now, I'll bodge it all up. Nope, it's not dark enough. There we go, that'll do. Are they equal sizes? I mean, I know they're not on the paper, but in actual real life, are they supposed to be? If I do too much, they're going to be way too weird. They'll look too big and make him look like some sort of alien, so we'll stop there. Last little bit, it could do with some darker ink splatters now. So I'll stick with the espresso. Can't beat a bit of ink splashing. There we go. I think he's done. There we go. Not bad for less than half an hour's worth of work. Yeah. Thanks for watching. See you next time.